highly competitive Republican primary challenge is brewing in South Carolina, and former President Trump is playing a role in the race. Former Department of Defense official Katie Arrington is trying to unseat first-term Congresswoman Nancy Mace. In Arrington's campaign launch last week, she called her fellow Republican, Congresswoman Mace, a sellout and repeated baseless claims that President Trump won the 2020 election. Well, last week, Mr. Trump endorsed Arrington. This is her second attempt to make it to Congress. Her first was in 2018. To discuss her campaign, let's bring in Katie Arrington. Katie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. How are you this evening?
I'm great. So you have come out of the gate arguing that Congresswoman Mace sold out President Trump because she voted to certify President Biden as the winner of the election. But isn't that her job as a member of Congress?
No, actually, her job as a pro-Trump, America First candidate, when we sent her up there, was to have a backbone and to stand up for what the priorities of the first congressional district would be. And that would be not to certify the elections, to actually have taken them and sent them back to the states to have them audited, not to just, go along with the word of the day and certify the elections. I mean, that's what we sent her to Washington to do, was not get involved in the swamp, to stand up strong for the first congressional district and the pro-Trump America First agenda.
But if I could just interrupt you for a second, there are a lot of experts who say you're just flat out wrong about that. The Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency says this November 3rd election was the most secure in American history. Even the former Vice President, Mike Pence, says President Trump is wrong. I had no right to overturn the election. So why do you continue to embrace this falsehood that is being pushed by the former president?
So the challenges weren't in the cybersecurity. I'm going to have to disagree with you there. It was in the fact that, we had people harvesting ballots. We had states sending out ballots to people who didn't even live there, and anybody could have voted on them. So I disagree with you. And what I would say is the American population, we need to be able to trust in our election systems, and that's critical. I mean, that's the Constitution depends on it. Our democracy, it's an imperative part. What we have no problem for Congress to shut down the government, to sequester, to tell federal employees they're not worth working, and to take a 20% pay cut, all because they can't agree on a budget. We couldn't take 30 days to send the election results back to the states and have them audited and then sent back up, and then there wouldn't be any concern. There's
Arizona conducted audit after audit, and even partisan Republican audits showed that there was no widespread fraud. Aren't you worried that people's faith in democracy is weakened when people like you, who are in a real position of authority, falsely claim that there were major election problems?
I think that people like me, who believe in transparency in government, wouldn't have anything to hide by sending back the elections results to the states to audit and to give it 30 days. And it wouldn't have done anything but prolong a 30-day inauguration of a president. I'm pretty sure we as an American, we would make room in our schedules to have that done, to have and be assured of the election results. So, it takes people with a backbone to stand up when things aren't on the up and up. I'm one of those people. I believe that the American people deserve transparency in the elections. We have the vast majority of Americans who do not believe that this election was secure, that things happened in there. And we, to dispout that, go back and do a forensic audit.
Once again, I have to point out that there is no evidence that there were things that were not on the up and up on any kind of wide scale basis. But let's move on. Last week, you resigned from your job at the Pentagon, where you were an information security official. But before you left, your security clearance had been suspended because you were being investigated for, quote, disclosing classified information without permission. What should voters in your district know about that situation and how it ended up?
Very transparent as everything else in my life. I worked hard from going into the Pentagon in 2019 on cybersecurity. I actually was over the defense industrial base, the 300,000 companies that make up our defense industrial base, and weapon systems and critical infrastructure. I took my job very seriously. I took it so much seriously that I won the Exceptional Civilian Award for the year for the Department of Defense. Under the Trump administration, I did amazing things. Now, the Biden administration had a different agenda. They were intimidated by the fact that there was a strong Republican, although I work in a nonpartisan job as a civil employee, as a senior executive service member. They did not want that message to be seen. So they trumped up charges against me, made false accusations against me that were never substantiated. And in fact, Air Force Special Investigations Unit, along with DCSA, did an investigation of the alleged incident less than a week after and found that there was no nefarious activity or anything to be warranted for a criminal investigation. But yet the Biden administration wanted to make sure that the Republican voice, albeit I was nonpartisan working as an employee, just the mere fact I was there was a problem for them. They kept me on administrative leave. I had to sue the federal government for them to actually provide me what is called a statement of reason, which once again there was nothing there. So I submitted it back, won my lawsuit against the department. Actually, they paid my attorney's fees, and then I resigned. So I do appreciate this speculation. It's really sad that the Biden administration continues to use the swamp to go after people that don't agree with them. I happen to be one of those people, and here I sit today.
That's a very serious charge that the administration went after you because of your political affiliation. There are Republicans working all throughout this government in a nonpartisan capacity. Do you have any evidence that they chose to go after you specifically?
I settled my lawsuit with them and I won. So I'll just leave it at that. That you think that this government, that the Biden administration isn't doing that. I mean, they did it to President Trump for years. As you see today and coming out with the allegations and potential criminal indictment on the Hillary Clinton campaign, absolutely people do this every single day. It's just sad that I happen to get in the crosshairs and upset some new political appointees that didn't agree with my point of view, which was that national security was everybody's business, that we as a nation need to be as secure as possible from our adversaries, China, Russia, Iran, et cetera. But the deep state and the swamp go after people every day with false information. The media tends to project and propagate false news, and it happens. But I'm a proud American citizen and looking forward to being in Congress to make sure that no one can do that again.
Do you expect that former President Trump will play a large role in your campaign?
I expect I will play an incredibly large role in my campaign as a candidate endorsed by President Trump. It is a privilege and an honor to have a president who looked at me and my work. I was over the DoD supply chain effort during the pandemic, and I as cybersecurity, and I'm in the Biden administration, I'm such a concern. I made sure that every shelf in America had, and every hospital had, the PPE they needed during the pandemic. I was part of that team. I was around the cybersecurity on Operation Warp Speed. The president was working with me virtually every day during that time and saw me as a dedicated civil servant who was out to serve her nation, not to get on the news and make a media position for myself. So his endorsement means a great deal. It just means that he knows that I'm a very hard worker, that I'm a fighter, and that I'm not going to, get bullied by the swamp in any regard. Whether it be, them trying to put a false narrative about my credibility and my good name, or my capability as a leader. So very excited, and a candidate who's ready to work to win her seat.
Understood. Well, Katie Arrington, candidate for Congress from South Carolina, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much. And if anybody is interested in finding any more about me, please go to katiearrington4sc.com.